My name is Olalekan Oshunkoya, and welcome to Impact Conversation. Impact Conversation brings together an opportunity for young entrepreneurs, social change makers to discuss the journey, to share the experiences, to share the learnings, and to share insight with emerging young leaders and social entrepreneurs. We bring together some of the leading members of the Impact Group community here in Abuja to share some of their learning, to share some of their experiences, to just talk about what it is like to be a social change maker, to talk about the pains, to talk about the gains, and then to connect with our audience of youth leaders and social change makers to see how some of the learnings from their own individual experience of some of these leaders can benefit them as well in their own work. So with me today is Mr. OVO of Impact Driven Youth Initiative. Mr. OVO has been a great, a good part of our community. He's been here to judge some of our competition for social impact initiatives in the past. He's also been a great member of the community when we first started. So I intentionally wanted to bring him aboard at this part of this first series because I know that as a young man that is so passionate about change and then social impact as well. So I wanted him to just share some of his learning and how he's turned passion into purpose, and then how that passion has now shaped his career choice. So Mr. OVO, please, what exactly, I talk about passion now, but what is that passion? What is the passion we're talking about in this case?
Thank you so much, Ola, for having me today. First of all, my name is OVO Tarigo, and the Executive Director of Impact Driven Young Leaders Initiative. So I deliberately had to spell out the Impact Driven Young Leaders Initiative because I needed to connect it to my story. The underlying part of the name is Impact Driven. Now, talking about why did I have to go into social development? I did that because of the need. I saw a need in the society. I saw young people leaving the university without jobs. I saw our infrastructure not being the best as it should be. And I saw the Niger Delta, where I grew up, a place that provides the wealth of the nation, being abandoned and affected by effect of oil exploration. So these are the things that drove my mind. I started thinking, like, what can be done differently, especially when it has to do with the oil exploration. At the point, I told myself I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer simply because I felt I could be an advocate, somebody who could push for litigation as around issues affecting oil, the degradation of the environment and all that. So, but that didn't work out for me. But I have to say this because it's my journey from the beginning to now. It's not a straight line, but they are tied around one single purpose: change. So this is what happened. I moved into the oil and gas because I felt I could provide a change to stop the effect of oil exploration in our environment. Now, but while I was in the oil and gas, I looked at the spectrum. Where can that effect happen? So I chose the Health, Safety and Environment Department. And I spent time studying on health and safety, had all my certification to practice as a safety officer. And while I worked in the oil and gas, I was able to make laws in my organization that or influence policies in my organization that improved a healthy oil and gas dealings, at least within the purview of our operation. But while I was doing that, there was a deeper cry in me that reminded me that while I was making progress in the environment, in oil and gas, there are other needs in society that are suffering. So how do I put myself in that space? I started creating time into volunteering with organizations who are in line with that my passion, because I felt that people are dying of preventable diseases simply because our health structure were not organized and all that. So what I did was, if I have to support the health, what do? I volunteered for the Nigeria Red Cross. Then I also volunteered for the with the special fire safety as a special marshal. All these are keyed into providing a service that will save lives, because I feel that our health structures and a few other infrastructure were not in order. Now, while I was doing that, I got to a point of dilemma. The dilemma is this: do I continue with my paid job, or I should walk out of my paid job and focus on pure impact projects? I mean, so at a point, I told myself, if I walk away from my paid job at that time, what will be the impact on me? I needed to survive. I needed to tell a story of impact from my life. So I had to manage my time. And why I did it is this: I told myself that from Monday to Friday, I'll dedicate my time to work. Then Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, I spend this time on social impact projects. And I was able to create a career from there, even while I was still in the oil and gas. So in a nutshell, I would say that I delved into the environmental, I delved into social impact project because I needed to solve a problem in society. There's a gap. Who are the people to fill this gap? Who are the advocates that will make sure that, who advocate for the people, for the young people who leave our various institutions without jobs? Who will stand in a gap?
Okay, Mr. OVO, thank you very much. I think I want to quickly pick on that conversation, because you did kind of like touch on a couple of things as you're saying that. But I'm particularly interested in at the point where you decided to say, yes, I'm a member of a community, and it's kind of like similar to the story of almost every change maker you find on the street, on this sector. You're a part of a community, you're a part of a society, you are not satisfied with what is going on. So you begin to do something very small, in a small scale here and there. You're volunteering with Red Cross, we're doing all this volunteering effort, and then from that point you said, there's so much to be done. I want to do that. So I'm going to resign my paid job, I'm going to leave this paid job, and I'm going to do this full time. I mean, there's a lot of transitioning that happens, and I think I want to speak more to that in a moment. But before I come to that, I'm interested in, I think, to know, as you navigate through that decision point to say, it's easy to just be convenient, to contribute to the society well-being by just volunteering, but you want to do more. Is there a single event or life event that happened that kind of like refined in your mind to say that, you know what, it's no longer okay for me as an individual to just sit aside and allow this injustice or this inefficiencies around me to happen. Now I want to commit to it full time as an individual and build an organization and build a project around it. So is there a particular event that made that possible, or is just a series of events? You can take a moment to think about that, but I'm curious to know that. I'm sure a lot of our audience will be too.
Yes, I think I understand what you're saying, and I think this is very interesting to say. There may not be one event. I think it's a couple of triggers. A lot of things triggered my decision, and I'll start by saying that each time I volunteered while I was still in my paid job, I get feedback from different people, and this feedback told me that there was something I was doing right at that time, and that's very important for change makers. Change makers really don't get paid for what they do, but what drives them is the feedback of the impact they create, and that it surpasses financial reward. So when I started getting such feedback from different people, I told myself, okay, it seems there's something I was doing right. However, at that time, I still could not define clearly what I was doing. And this is important because there are so many young people who do a lot of stuff, yet they still haven't found their purpose. So I had an encounter with a woman who met me and told me that she has followed my works for a while, and that the summary of what she can tell me is that she's impressed with my social impact project. So that was the first time the word impact struck me. And that's why I said I will start by introducing my organization, and I underlined impact driven. So when the lady told me that she's impressed with my social impact project, I looked at it and I reviewed it. Then I felt the need to connect with more people who do what I do. And I joined the network, the Yali network. When I joined the network, I saw a lot of people doing similar things like myself. And I was hoping to be inspired through people's stories and their lives. But interestingly, people came to me and told me that they followed my works as well. So these were the triggers I mentioned. So when it got to that point, I told myself, okay, if I'm getting feedback from so many people on these things I devote 2 days out of 7 days in a week for, and probably a few hours because I have to manage my weekend and other stuff. So that means that if I spend more time doing this, lives can be transformed, lives can change. And that was it for me. So, and my advice to young people is this: when you are at that stage, when you're on the brink of that decision, do not be hasty. What did I do differently? I reviewed so many young people who have had similar experience, who had rushed out of their paid job and they start having challenges. So I told myself, if I have to leave, I have to get myself organized. The first thing I did was to document my story. So in documenting my story, I made sure that the things I have done were recorded either in writing or in pictures or in videos. So I documented my story. The second thing I did was I had to speak with somebody who shares similar passion with me, so that if I have to step into the next stage of my life, let me not do it alone. So I have a conversation with somebody, a friend of mine, Dr. Obina Ebiri, and we both came together to set up Impact Driven Young Leaders Initiative, even while I was still working in my organization. So now, why setting up Ideal Initiative? I was mindful of the fact that if I leave my paid job, I won't have salaries anymore. That means my lifestyle must change. A few plans have to be made. So all these things in my mind, at the point, I won't lie to you, it almost discouraged me not to quit. But it got to a point, I wrote my resignation letter a year before I left my organization. But that 1 year was a period of preparation for my exit. And the rest is history.
Well, that's interesting. That's very impressive. I mean, I'm particularly interested also in the idea that you touched on it very briefly, but I think I want to touch on it, on the importance of having clarity and then having mentorship. So did this person you mentioned mentored you, or some sort of you speaking to, as you're trying to brainstorm around, I've got passion. This is what I like to do, and I want to turn this into purpose. But in organizing that purpose, steps that needs to be taken, action that needs to be taken, how exactly do you think that's the most important thing? That do you have some exposure with mentorship with this person you mentioned, or is it just some sort of a partnership relationship that you had with this person? Because I personally know mentorship is very important. As a matter of fact, it's one of the key ingredients that you need to pursue in terms of as you begin to navigate that initial, because you talk about almost quitting, there will be tough times, but mentorship will allow you to kind of like navigate, navigate those experiences. So can you just briefly talk about that?
So I'm going to say this, right? I mentioned, I made reference to 2 people. I'll talk about it first. I had a bit of mentorship from this young woman, Chioma Okwago. She sat me down and she told me her journey in the development world. And she gave me a few advice, which I took seriously. And part of the advice is documenting my story. Like I mentioned, I said, as part of my transition period, I made sure I documented my story. And it was advice from this young woman. She told me, one way to break even, to let the world know what you are doing, or for people to understand that you are doing your thing differently, is to have your story. Because others may not tell your story for you at the beginning. It's a story you tell to people that the people will understand and come to have interest in you. So that helped me. Then the other person I mentioned, Dr. Bina, is at the point I was to set up an organization. I didn't want to do it alone because it's like the saying goes in Yali Network that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go with others, you move together. So I felt that on this journey, I don't plan to have a short sail. I want to have a smooth and a long sail. So I needed somebody who has similar passion and convictions about what I believe, what my passion is. And that's how Obina came on board, and we both founded Ideal Initiative. So it's interesting because in the first grant we ever had in Ideal Initiative was because was due to networking. The first grant ever was networking, and you can credit that to the strength of partnership as well. You know,
okay.
So yeah,
that's very good.
Yeah, strength of partnership. So I mean, it's very important to say that. Then also, another person that played a role in my life in terms of mentorship, because I'm trying to respond to the part of mentorship at this time, is I had a chance to meet with Linus Okore, and I listened to his journey from his teenage years to adulthood and all that, and I told myself, and that was the point of my transition, you know. So when I listened to his story, I told myself, like, if this man could, if this man had done this for several years and he has found a meaning from what he's doing, that means I can do it as well. So his story actually inspired me as well, Dr. Linus Okore.
Okay, that's very good. I hear that. I think one thing you've done very well in terms of, I'm able to think about it in terms of how people transition from their point of view of having a paid job, doing other things, and then going all the way into becoming independent, and then the key important thing. And I think that's one thing that I personally, in my own experience, I've seen with young leaders who want to go into social development and who want to actually do entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship, is that how do you identify those first key partnership collaborations, especially considering that we live in an environment where people are very individual focused. You know, people just want to do my thing. I want to be the co-founder. I want to be the founder. I want to be, but then identifying the right partnership. But just before I will come to that, I know that you've been very active with you mentioned slightly again, Yali Network, and how Yali has been part of. I know that there has been you were once one of the chair for the Abuja Yali face-to-face, and I know that community. So can you talk about, I'm assuming that, but tell me if I'm wrong, but the importance of community, connectivity, networking in the formative years or formative months of building a new organization as a youth leader.
Networking, you can never underestimate the power of networking, and that's why I always speak about the Yali Network, a platform where young people with like minds come together and change the world. As a young person who is on the verge of transition, you need people, because that moment, a lot of things come to your mind, a lot of stuff. Can I succeed? How will the next 5 years be for me? How do I pay my rent? How do I clear my bills? All this will come up in your mind. So, but the power of when you're in a community of people who do similar thing with you, it helps to sharpen your thoughts and calm your nerves. So in the Yali Network, for example, I had a chance to meet people. Now at the time I was worried. You know, I was on the verge of transition. I was worried, but I saw people who have already moved on, or moving from their paid job to social impact projects, and these people, they still look up to me, and like they felt that I was doing something better than them. So I was like, okay, that was encouragement for me.
So you get validation, yes, from knowing that people are you're not alone.
Exactly.
There are other people around you that have done it before, and then that give validation to that you're not on the track, you're not crazy.
Yes,
I feel that all the time because it's like, are you just, you're gonna leave your pay job, you have security, you have job security.
Somebody told me this, like, how does that even work? You work in oil and gas, you're well paid, you live a comfortable life, and you want to walk away? I mean, there are people who called me when, at the time I left my organization, there are people who called me and told me that, look, I know you've made a mistake, but it's not too late for you to turn back. I was told.
I like the sound of that, because this is just one of the key important part of that transition period from the time that you've convinced as an individual, you know in your own life that, oh, I want to do this. But then we live in an environment where you cannot just make choices for yourself. You have other people around you that needs to validate your direction of your direction of travel. Exactly. And then these people will come and say that, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you're doing the right thing? And then so you're all of a sudden you're afraid to take that decision to transition, because you're wondering, if I fail, these people will come back to me and tell me that, but we told you this is not the right path to do. And I think the beautiful thing about that is that being in a community of change, and that's one thing I jumped on that, because that's exactly what we do at Impact Cove. That's exactly why we're establishing that curate a community together, have people who understand your journey, who understand that it's okay to not have your first 2 grants accepted. Mm-hmm. It's okay to keep getting rejection. Yeah. It's okay to keep borrowing money to buy data, just because you want to establish purpose. But by the time you transition that, it will stabilize, and then you go into that level of little bit of comfort, some consistency, and you can become sustainable after that. But if you are within an environment of people that doesn't understand that space, they don't understand that journey,
lost completely.
You will lose. You will never be validated, and that's important. So I thank you for bringing that spot on. And the other thing, I'm going to digress a little bit and just kind of like speak into the concept of here, everybody is angry at government. Everybody is not happy, because if you think about the concept of social change in our part of the world compared to other part of the world, I mean, it's what drives it is different. Here, it's anger that drives social change. You can no longer take it. I'm tired of seeing this happening. Yeah. I've seen this happening, and then because some people are so nonchalant, they don't care. But then all of a sudden you're like, I care enough to be part of it. That's why I'm volunteering. I care enough to be part of it. That's why I'm doing all this. But then I'm moving from caring enough to actually, I want to go deeper and then do this full time. And then all of a sudden, some people come around you, and then you begin to think about caring enough. But in other part of the world, people do development because they curate a career out of it. Because right here, people look at you, it's like, how can you be an activist for life? Like, how can your job is activism? I mean, how do you even, then somehow somebody is paying your bill? So I want to transition into, how do you convert passion into sustained purpose, such that 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 4 years, you are still in the game. You are still able to get grants to continue your operation. You're still going to pay your salary of your staff. You're still able to. So can you just speak to, from your own experience in terms of what do you need to do? I mean, you kind of touched it with your validating your story and then documenting your story. So I'll leave that with you.
I think I would say that transiting from passion to purpose takes time, takes mentorship, and takes deep thinking. I'll say this because when you, like you mentioned, in this part of the world, people go into this space because of dissatisfaction. People are angry with the government and all those things. But in my case, it's different. My case was, if things are not working well, can I be the only one to start this movement? Like, not waiting for other people. That's part of my story. Like, not just because I was angry with the government. Yes, I was dissatisfied with things, but I felt that if we keep waiting for government to do some of these things, can we really, will this thing ever be done? And that defines a great aspect of me. For those who could define me very well, I'm deeply involved with what we call civic engagement. The summary of all I do is on youth and civic engagement. And why do I do it? I do it because in my organization, for example, we spend time in promoting boot camps to train young people on social development. So the mistakes I've made in my life, they are documented. I've written my story. They are documented. And so when I mentor other people during boot camps, I tell them the mistakes I've made. And I tell them how it could be done better. So this helps in transition for many young people. So, and then when we carry out this boot camp, what are the focus areas? One is storytelling, and I told you why. Because documenting your story is very important towards a complete transition. So we train young people on storytelling. We train young people on civic engagement. So, and this is the area I want to spend my time in reference to a statement you made about do people go into this space because they're angry about the government. Now, the issue is not all about the government. And this is my reason. In democracies around the world are shaped by the people. But in Nigeria today, there's a gap between the people and governance. So how do we get more young people involved? It's part of my passion. So we train young people to understand the ills of the society, and we train them on how they can solve this problem. Government alone cannot solve our problems. Absolutely. So how do we solve this problem? You can actually create a career from solving this problem. That's a summary. Okay. Now, so in creating a career from this problem is when we groom young people in Ideal Initiative, we groom them in their area of interest. There are some people who are just focused on education, like they want to see how education is transformed in Nigeria. So how do we help these young people to help us advocate for better education? We train them on areas of advocacy. Since you already know the area you're focused on, education, right? Okay, how do we amplify your voice in this area? So we train them on those areas. Now, at the end of the day, what happens? All these young people create career out of these areas they've identified themselves with. And what happens to the society? You see a lot of young people solving problems. When I walked into this space earlier on, there was a young man I met, and he told me how meeting me transformed his life. I met him at the point he was dejected on a few programs around his life, and I told him my story. From the 25 minutes conversation we had, his life changed completely. Today, he has found a path in that which he loved doing. Today, he's been recognized by a different world platform on account of what he does in education, right? So in a sense, I would say that giving people the right information they need to know, supporting people in their dreams will actually help them to become better, and will help them transiting from the stage they are to a better stage. But above all, what does this transition all mean? It translates to impact.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty much interested in that, because we talk about impact. I mean, interestingly, this is your organization's name. I mean, that's also our hub's name. So we're interested. What does it mean? What does impact mean? I mean, how do you measure it? Because one thing that's really been very absent in all of this is that development is very measured. You know, it's not rocket science, but at the same time, some of the interventions that you do, it's very difficult to actually add data or add science to prove that they are working or they're not working. So number one, I'll put it in 2 in 1. When you talk about impact, what does it mean to you as an individual in this space, as someone who's been around for a while? How will you define impact, and then how do you measure it in your organization?
So I'm not going to define impact by dictionary meaning or what people say impact is. I'll define it from my experience. Impact from my experience is committing time, energy, and resources towards making a change, and that change actually happens. Mm-hmm. So you want there are people in a community who lack access to library. And then in 2018, we carried out, my organization carried out a library project in Imo State. We did analysis of the rural environment in Imo, and we realized that most of the schools in Imo State, in the rural areas, do not have access to libraries. Not only libraries, those children who are in examination classes have never seen mathematics textbooks or English textbook before. So what did we do? After analyzing the feedback we got from the community, we embarked on a project to provide that which they do not have. And when we did that, we gave opportunity for over 2,000 young people in Umbitoli community and Ikeduru community access to read, access to examination materials, space to read. That is impact. The impact eventually translated is people who couldn't have access to books now had it.
Okay.
And it reduced the ratio of those who fail examination classes. Because one of the reasons why people in the rural community fail examination classes, like when I mean examination classes, we're talking about WAEC, GC, and JAM and all that, is because some of them really don't have access to these books. So after our project, the feedback from the community was positive. And the positive story is that more people pass their examination now because they have access to books to read.
That's excellent.
That's impact.
That's excellent. That's it. I think, I mean, in general terms, that's what impact is all about. The whole idea is that, and I like the fact that you mentioned you actually started by talking about there are schools or communities in Imo State that do not have a library. So you didn't just start the journey of providing a need or an intervention without doing an assessment of the need itself. So, and that's actually what makes impact possible at the end of the day, is about you've identified the need before you actually embark on the project. There's a need assessment, and then you now go on it. So you are not going about giving libraries to communities that will not even use the library. So it's not about providing a library. So impact comes simply because now there's a library, students are using the library, and now they can get better resources to support their education, and they can do well in their exam. It's a very simple situation. So I think that's great. Thank you for making that clear. Because I thought I asked that question because sometimes we use these words, and then for some people it doesn't really, it's not understandable because it's not our data. It's not. So that's it. I'm just going to take a little bit of digress a little bit from focusing on your organization, focusing on you and your story and what you've chosen to do. But I'm going to brighten up a little bit into Nigeria as a country. I mean, we live here. This is our home. This is our country. This is our place. And then part of the reason why we do what we do is because we identify for the need to support the prosperity of the land. The past couple of weeks has been a whole awakening around the right of young people and then the power of the government and what's government. So what are your thoughts? EndSARS protest, the new energy from the young Nigerians to say, we're tired, we're demanding. Yeah.
I think EndSARS is one of the greatest things that has ever happened to Nigeria since independence. And you may ask me why. I will tell you.
Please do.
For the first time, the citizens realize that the rights of the Nigerian citizen is enshrined in our constitution. After the Civil War, there has been a lot of division in Nigeria and a lot of stories that nobody wants to talk about. There are a lot of injustice in our country that nobody wants to talk about. A constitution that is supposed to protect the people has become a repressive constitution. Leaders who are elected to solve democracy around the world is responding to the needs of the people. So elected leaders are supposed to respond to the needs of the people. But in our country today, our elected leaders have become so repressive and suppressive to the extent that people can't even speak. I'm coming from this background because I need to tell a story. People wonder why Nigerians do not vote in election. It's because of this apathy, of this anger about the elected leaders not meeting the needs of the people. So this apathy has actually benefited the political class for a long time. But for the first time, young Nigerians came together and said enough is enough to an issue. Why it's important? Because if we can agree on end to police brutality, we can also agree on end to the luxurious life of our political leaders. For example, in this pandemic era, where countries around the world are cutting costs of governance, our legislators, they still budget excessive amount of money for themselves. It's a situation at a time where the VAT tax has been increased for the commoners, electricity bill has been increased for the commoners, yet they keep throwing more things to the commoners to bear. So now the EndSARS is a reawakening that, look, it's no more business as usual. We have come of age and things will change. And one other thing why I like the EndSARS is that people are beginning to realize that government or the power actually belongs to the people and not those we've elected. Because come to think of it, they represent the number of our elected leaders in our country. If you want to add all of them together, from the National Assembly to governors and all those things, they are not up to 10,000 people.
So essentially, I mean, what you're saying is that the number of people that are actually like determining the fate of the country is less than 1%, maybe 0.5% of the
It's not up to 1% of this country.
Yeah.
Yet the majority of the people are not acting, they're not exercising their right. So the EndSARS is the reawakening. And I will say this, I was to an extent, I took part in the EndSARS protest, and I will say this, part of what I gathered from there is that while we celebrate the success of the EndSARS, there are so many young Nigerians that are still scared who still do not know their rights. So when one of the days I participated and people realized I was there, I was called to speak. The few minutes I spoke, I saw changes. What did I speak differently? Before I was told to speak, I noticed some people who were reluctant to be part of the protest. They were scared. So when I spoke, I mainly just told the story. And the story is enshrined in our Constitution. I said, look, for those who are standing on the fence, who are contemplating whether they will be part of the protest or not, this is the good news for you. What you are doing is what you intend to do, or for those who are already on it, what you are doing is not illegal. It is enshrined in our Constitution. We have the right to life, right to liberty, right to peaceful assembly. At the time I finished describing the right of the Nigerian citizen, people who were packed outside, who were not willing to join the protest at that time, they came and joined because they were reminded that it is their right and is protected by the Constitution.
And what does that say? It talks about what has been missing all along. It's been that awareness, that level of understanding that people do. It's amazing that it's 2020. You have most people that participated in this protest are actually young Nigerians, and then they still don't know how much of. So it's safe to say they're educated to some extent at least, and they are still not that aware. So if educated Nigerians are not aware, then what happens to people in the villages? You can imagine.
So, I remember the educated Nigerians are the minority. We have the number of people in the rural communities surpasses those in the urban cities.
So
it's a fact.
Cool. So essentially, we all know that's one thing that's like very important, that's been kind of like reinforced over and over again through this whole agitation in the recent weeks. It's about the need for improved civic engagement, improved citizenship, and improving. And I think the willingness of everyday people to actually participate in decision making, and that's what's lacking in our democracy. Because you're not participating, those who participate decide your fate. You are just a victim. Now a call to action. The more we participate, the more we can influence, and the more we can influence, the more we can have improved outcomes of some sort. And then the other thing I was going to ask you actually, because I've been thinking about this, and I'm like, when we think about most people that end up choosing to become activists, choosing to become social entrepreneurs, are actually driven by some sort of a childhood event, or maybe some sort of a injustice they experience at a personal level. They're always connected to a story, always connected to an event. And I want to know that, is there something that you can remember, or that you can connect, that an injustice that you have experienced, and then I'll come back quickly before I forget to ask that other question, is to now link that over. Has there been an injustice you've experienced that connects to your decision to actually do this, to do this as your life work? And then the other thing is to think about, if there's one thing you can change about Nigeria, like about the context of how this country works, and if you have the empowerment or the positioning and the tools and the resources to make it, what would that thing be?
Okay, so first of all, I would say that there's no one story that sparked my choice, that pushed my decision to start doing what I'm doing now. There's no one story. It's a combination of different things I mentioned earlier, right? Growing up in the Niger Delta, seeing a high level of unemployment, I just feel that things can be different, you know. So yes, I agree that there are people who are in the civic space, activists who get inspired to do what they do because of an ugly experience. Mine was different. I felt that I read a lot of history books, both in the country and about other countries, and I read a lot about the role of people in governance, right from secondary school. You know, when we took government as a subject at that time, you know, I took interest in that. I saw the beauty of the people. So, and the people is not, and when you read about theory of change, you really don't need so many people to instigate change. It could be just one person.
People, absolutely.
You know? So, and that was my interest. So when I saw that, when I had that information, I felt I can do this. And the only way to do it is not to wait for a bigger platform. Like I told you, I was having my paid job, but I was dedicating some of my time to solving local problems. When I mentioned Red Cross, road safety, people may not understand it. During the bomb blast in Abuja, those people who responded to those mass casualties, I was one of those people running into that space where bombs, that dangerous area. I was one of those people, you know. So it's not because I don't have a job. Like I mentioned, I was engaged, but I felt the need to start solving problems. You know, one other thing I noticed is that in Abuja was people, not only in Abuja anyway, in Nigeria, our drivers do not respect the rules of the road. So these are issues that can be solved by the people, not just the government alone. So I volunteered for the federal road safety, and I will drive my car, I see where there is traffic, I will park and start controlling the traffic. Now, why am I telling this story? It's to connect to the fact that individuals can initiate that can spark that move to make a change, you know, and we mustn't really necessarily wait for government to do all things.
Absolutely.
Now, talking about what I could change, or what would I do?
What one thing you can I mean, you can weave it any way you like.
What is that one thing? If I was the leader, or if I'm in a position to make a change in this country, the one thing I would do is social justice. The reason why there's terrorism, the reason why there's unemployment is all woven around social justice. There's so many injustices in our system, and that is one thing I want to solve. If we solve the issue of social justice, there won't be hatred for the Nigerian police force. No, people are angry with the police force because somebody commits a crime, you report to the police, he's arrested, because he has access to the commissioner or to the governor, he's released. The people who had suffered from the injustice from that person will never be happy with the system. You know, so let's go to education. People who legitimately should gain admission into a higher institution never get admitted because they do not know VC, or they've not gotten a letter from a minister. This has to stop. As long as these issues are there, the best Nigeria will keep losing the best hands. That's why you see that many young Nigerians are running away from the country. It's the underlying part is social justice. Okay. Let's fix social justice. It takes care of corruption.
Fix social justice, fix Nigeria. We should start a campaign and start saying we can
fix. Because it will fix, when you fix the social justice system, you will end corruption.
OVO, as change leaders, as a social entrepreneur, it's a very tough one for everyone. It's very difficult to kind of like in living our lives and struggling through all these challenges and trying to make this change happen. But sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. But I would like to, for the sake of our audience, just ask one thing. What's that one thing that actually that makes you happy, that one achievement that you are proud of, something that happened that you know that this is making this experience, this whole process worth it for me? Can you please share with us?
Okay, so that one thing that I'm excited about in my journey so far is my ability to document all my experiences in a book. So, and my decision to write this book is because at the time I was finding my path, I was looking for books that would guide me in the interest areas. There was no one book that defined civic engagement to the extent I would want to have it. There was no one book I could lay my hands upon that described volunteering in depth. So, in order to give a career path to people who are interested in civic engagement, I was able to document what civic engagement is all about, focusing on volunteering and community organizing for action. So, it's a book that change makers will grab, and it will define their path for those who wish to toe that line. And I'm proud of it because it's not released yet.
Okay, I was going to ask this.
It's not released.
Okay,
it's not released.
Okay.
But I'm already. There are different international organizations who have joined me in a research, like to conclude the research part of the book.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want to mention their names yet because since the book has not been released, but international organizations are interested in the research aspect of the book. So it actually captured what volunteerism entails, how to begin volunteering, what people should look out for, and above all, the challenges volunteers face.
Okay, I think because you mentioned that, I'm just going to jump on just for 1 minute before I let you go. I know that 2020 in all of our lives will remain a year of action, or a year of surprises, a year of impulse. I don't know how to qualify it, but it's just a lot of unexpected events happened, and then for organizations, for individuals. But for you, I know that I remember that at the very height of the lockdown and all of that, you organized a group of volunteers for pandemic volunteers. Can you quickly just tell us about that experience? Why? I mean, what led to that, and then what was the effect of the outcome of that process?
So during the pandemic and eventual lockdown, I was watching on the news about the US, Italy, the Europe as a whole, So I saw that people were dying, and I started asking myself a question like, if it happens, if this wave hits Nigeria the way Europe is experiencing it today, can we survive it in this country where we do not have health facilities? So I felt that one of the ways to help support to make sure this doesn't happen is to train a group of young people who can advocate, who can share information on how to prevent the virus and how to scale through. And that's how Pandemic Volunteer came on board. So Pandemic Volunteer through the Pandemic Volunteer, we were able to raise over 1,000 volunteers across Nigeria in all states who were there to get information from UN sources and the NCDC. Then you break the information down to the common Nigerians. And what were those information? Information that has to do with how to use your nose mask, or what are the things you must do to prevent the virus, and all those things. These are information that are there, but people don't take seriously. So, but by the time volunteers start engaging their peers and all those things, it becomes domesticated. Now, we recognize that at the time the lockdown was proclaimed in Nigeria, we saw that people would go hungry. So what Pandemic Volunteer did was to partner with other organizations to begin food drive, because we know that majority of Nigerians live by the day. Mm-hmm. So we were the first in this country, one of the first I could recall that initiated the idea of providing palliative, even before the federal government started it. We partner with different organizations. We did that in different places. But the truth is this: our volunteers are people who are engaged in what they do, but they choose to sacrifice their time and resources towards making sure that other Nigerians are comfortable during the lockdown. Okay. And one thing again we fought with using pandemic volunteer was misinformation. There was a lot of misinformation all around, and there were issues of stigmatizing COVID-19 patients and all those things. So we use the platform to share the right information, to encourage people not to stigmatize others and all that. And the feedback has been impressive.
It's been a wonderful evening and sharing this opportunity to just kind of like have this conversation and share this insight with you. But just before I let you go, Mr. OVO, I'm just going to ask you one more question. I know most of our audience, we are making this video for most of the people that will be coming in contact with it are young change leaders, those who are transitioning from, they want to just involve themselves in some sort of social action. And then what one thing will you say, or two things or three tips that you have for, I'm a young man, I'm a young woman, I'm a young Nigerian, I'm a young African, I'm tired of government, I want my community to be better, I want my life to be better, and I want to also use the tool of social action, community organizing, change, social entrepreneurship, anything at all that you want to do from my own little corner. What are the things, and I'm listening to Mr. OVO, and I want to take 1, 2, 3 things away. What are those things that you want? You've touched on a lot of things for the entire conversation, but I just want to
for all young Nigerians or young Africans across who would be watching this video, I will say this to you. One way to change our community is to seek knowledge. Without knowledge, you are lost in the process. There are a lot of people who are in the civic space who cannot make real change because they don't have the required knowledge. So when you seek to develop yourself, you're on the right path towards the change you want to see in the society. And when I talk about knowledge, it helps you to ask the right questions. When you want to hold government to account and you do not know how the process of budgeting works, you can't ask the right questions. If you want to improve our educational system or our health infrastructure, and you do not have knowledge to go about it, you can't effect that change you want. So seek knowledge. Number 2, I would say that be an active citizen, because like Abraham Lincoln described democracy, is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It means that the people is the core part of democracy. What is your role in shaping our democracy? If you truly want to seek change, then you should be willing to participate in our democratic process. And one of the ways to participate in it as a young person is to be involved in active civic education. You know your rights, you know your responsibility. All these things help eventually in a social impact project. Now, finally, I will say this. Being an activist or a social advocate, if you are doing it out of passion, you must connect a genuine reason to it. But if you are doing it because you feel there are some people who are successful and famous and you want to be famous, then you may lose steam, because the journey might be tough for those who are in for rewards. But the journey is smoother for those who are in for a change and impact. So as you prepare in contemplation, know that the choice is not for fame or for money. The choice is to make sure things change, is to make sure things are transformed. And when there is true transformation, your life can change as well. A lot of people have walked this path, focus on impact, and they end up being famous and successful. But do not place the success and fame first. Let it come whenever it comes. But if it doesn't come, know that you live your life changing the world.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful evening sharing this platform with you. Thank you for taking out the time to be part of this conversation. Again, Impact Conversation brings together it's a platform where we'll engage social entrepreneurs, social change makers in a conversation around what exactly does it feel like to be a change maker, and what does it feel like, what are the pains, what are the gains, and what are the lessons learned, what are the things that they can share with those who are coming or who are considering the same path, and how can we collectively as a community help ourselves in our resolve to make social change possible in Nigeria and beyond, and in our effort to also make sure that we are supporting ourselves, we are mentoring ourselves, and that we are giving ourselves the opportunity to grow together, to learn together, and then to make sure that together we can deliver a better experiences, a better world, and then we can be part of it. At Impact Cove, that's what we commit to do. That's what we are here for. We provide the resources and the platform for everybody who wants to support social change in different ways, and then we want to we incubate projects, we support individuals and organizations in their effort to be change leaders in any way possible.